Look, I didn't want to be a half-blood. If you're reading this because you think you might be one, my advice is close this book right now. Believe whatever your mom or dad told you about your birth, and try to lead a normal life. Being a half-blood is dangerous. It's scary. Most of the time, it's it's getting you killed in a painful way, nasty ways. If you're a normal kid reading this because you think it's fiction, great, read on. I envy you for being able to believe that none of this ever happened. But if you recognize yourself in these pages, if you feel something stirring inside, stop reading immediately. You might be one of us. And once you know that, it's only a matter of time before they sense it too. And they'll come for you. Don't say I didn't warn you. My name is Percy Jackson. I'm 12 years old. Until a few months ago, I was a boarding student at Yancey Academy, a private school for troubled kids in upstate New York. Am I a troubled kid? Yeah, I could say that. I could start at any point in my short, miserable life to prove it, but things really started going bad last May when our 6th grader class took a field trip to Manhattan. 28 metal case kids and 2 teachers on a yellow school bus, heading to Metropolitan Museum of Art to look at ancient Greek and Roman stuff. I know it sounds like torture. Most Yancey field trips were. But Mr. Brunner, our Latin teacher, was leading this trip, so I had hopes. Mr. Brunner was this middle-aged guy in a motorized wheelchair. He had a thinning hair and a scruffy beard and a frayed tweed jacket, which always smelled like coffee. You wouldn't think he'd be cool, but he's told stories and jokes and let us play games in class. He also had this awesome collection of Roman armor and weapons, so he was the only teacher whose class who didn't put me to sleep. I hoped this trip would be okay. At least I hoped that for once I wouldn't get in trouble. Boy, was I wrong. See, bad things happen to me on field trips, like my 5th grade school. When in Sarkata Battlefield, I had this accident with Miss Revoluni war cannon. I wasn't aiming for the school bus, but of course I got expelled away. And before that, at my 4th grade school, when I took a behind-the-scenes tour of the Marine World Shark Pool, I sort of hit the wrong lever at the catwalk, and our class took an unplanned swim. And the time before that, well, you get the idea. This trip, I was determined to be good, all the way into the city. I put up Nancy Bobfit, freckly, red-handed, climatic girl, hitting my best friend Groover in the back of the head with chunks of peanut butter and ketchup sandwich. Groover was a easy target. He was scrawny. He cried when he got frustrated. He must have been held back several grades because he was the only 6th grader with acne and a start of wispy beard on his chin. On top of that, he was crippled. He had a note excusing him from PE for the rest of his life because he had some kind of muscular disease in his legs. He walked funny, like every step hurt him. But don't let that fool you. You should have seen him run when it was Italian day for the cafeteria. Anyway, Nancy Bobfit was throwing wads of sandwich that stuck in his curly brown hair. And she knew I couldn't do anything back to her because I was already a propagation. The headmaster had threatened me with death by in-school suspension if anything bad, embarrassing, or even mildly entertaining happened on this trip. I'm going to kill her, I mumbled. Groover tried to calm me down. It's okay, I like peanut butter. He dodged another pizza of Nancy's lunch. That's it. I started to get up, but Groover pulled me back to my seat. You're already on propagation, he reminded me. You know you'll get blamed if anything happens. Looking back on it, I wish I'd I wished I decked Nancy Bobfit right there and there. In the school suspension would have been nothing compared to the mess I was about to get myself into. Mr. Bruner led the museum tour. He rode up front in his wheelchair, guiding us through a big, echoey galleries, past marble statues and glass cases full of really old black and orange pottery. It blew my mind that this stuff had survived for 2,000, 3,000 years. He gathered us around a 13-foot tall stone column with a big sphinx on top. He started telling us how it was a grave maker, a girl about our age. He told us how carvings on the side. He was trying to listen to what he had said because it was kind of interesting. But everybody around me was talking, and every time I told them to shut up, the other teacher, Miss Chaperone, Miss Dodds, would give me the evil eye. Miss Dodds, with the little math teacher from Georgia, who always wore a black leather jacket, even though she was 50 years old. She looked mean enough to ride a Harley right into your locker. So she had a Yankee halfway through the year. When our last math teacher had a nervous breakdown from her first day, Miss Dodds loved Nancy Bobfit and figured I was a devil spawn. She would point her crooked finger at me and say, "Now, honey, real sweetheart." And I knew I was going to get after-school detention for a month. Okay.
One time after she'd made me erase answers out of old math workbooks until midnight, I told Groover I didn't think Miss Dodge was a human. He looked at me really serious and said, You're absolutely right. Miss Bruner kept talking about Greek funeral art. Finally, Nancy Bob O'Fit snickered something about the naked guy on the steel, and I turned around and said, "Will you shut up?" It came out louder than I meant to, like this. The whole group laughed. Mr. Bruner stopped his story. "Mr. Jackson," he said, "did you have a comment?" My face was totally red. I said, "No, sir." Mr. Bruner pointed to one of the pictures of the steel. "Perhaps you'll tell us what this picture represents?" I looked at the carving and felt a flush of relief because I actually recognized it. "That's Kronos eating his kids, right?" "Yes," Mr. Bruner said, obviously not satisfied. "And he did this because..." Well, I racked my brain to remember. Kronos was the king god and... God? Mr. Bruner asked. Titan, I corrected myself, and he didn't trust his kids who were the gods. So, Kronos ate them, right? But his wife hid baby Zeus and gave Kronos a rock to eat instead, and later, when Zeus grew up, he tricked his dad, Kronos, into barfing up his brothers and sisters. "Ew," said one of the girls behind me. And so there was this big fight between the gods and the Titans, I continued, and the gods won. Some snickered from the group. Beside me, Nancy Buffett mumbled to a friend, like we're going to use this in real life. Like it is going to stay on our job applications. Please explain why Kronos ate his kids. And why, Mr. Jackson? Bruner said. To paraphrase Miss Buffett's excellent question, does this matter in real life? Busted, Grover muttered. Shut up, Nancy hissed, her face even brighter red than her hair. At least Nancy got packed too. Mr. Bruner was the only one who even caught her saying anything wrong. He had rather ears. I thought about this question and shrugged. I don't know, sir. I see. Mr. Bruner looked disappointed. Well, have credit, Mr. Jackson. Zeus did indeed feed Kronos a mixture of 5 children, who, of course, being immortal gods, has been living and growing up completely undigested in the Titan's stomach. The gods defeated their father, sliced him to pieces with his own scythes, and scattered his remains in the Tartarus, the darkest part of the underworld. On that happy note, it's time to lunch, Mr. Dodds. Would you lead us back outside? The class drifted off, and the girls holding their stomachs, the guys pushing each other's around and acting like doofuses. Grover and I were about to follow when Mr. Bruner said, Mr. Jackson, I knew that was coming. I told Grover to keep going. Then I turned toward Mr. Bruner. Sir? Mr. Bruner had this look that wouldn't let you go, intense brown eyes that couldn't be 1,000 years old and had seen everything. You must learn the answer to my question, Mr. Bruner told me. About the Titans? About real life. And how their studies apply to it. Oh, what you learn from me, he said, is vitally important. I expect you to treat it as such. I will accept only the beast from you, Percy Jackson. I wanted to get angry. This guy pushed me so hard. I mean, sure, it was the kind of cool on tournament days when he dressed up in a suit of Roman armor and shouted, What ho! And challenged us, sword point and against chalk, to run to the board and name every great Greek and Roman person who ever lived and their mother and what god they worshipped. But Mr. Bruner expected me to be as good as everyone else, despite the fact that I had dyslexia and attention deficit disorder, and I had never made above a C in my life. No, he didn't expect me to be as good. He named them facts, much less spelled them correctly. I mumbled something about trying harder, while Mr. Bruner took one long, sad look at the steel, like he'd been at this girl's funeral. He told me to go outside and eat my lunch.
The class gathered on the front steps of the museum, where we could watch the foot traffic along the Fifth Avenue. Overhead, a huge storm was brewing, with clouds blacker than I'd ever seen over the city. I figured maybe it was global warming or something, maybe because the weather all across New York State had been weird since Christmas. We'd have massive snowstorms, flooding, wildfires from lightning strikes. I wouldn't have been surprised if this was a hurricane blowing in. Nobody else seemed to notice. Some of the guys were pelting
pigeons with lunchable crackers. Nancy Bobofit was trying to pickpocket something from a lady's purse, and of course, Mrs. Dodds wasn't seeing a thing. Grover and I sat on the edge of the fountain, away from the others. We thought that maybe if we did that, everybody wouldn't know we were from that school. The school for loser freaks who couldn't make it elsewhere. Detention? Grover asked. Nah, I said. Not from Brunner. I just wish he'd lay off me sometimes. I mean, I'm not a genius. Grover didn't say anything for a while. Then, when I thought he was going to give me some deep philosophical comments to make me feel better, he said, "Can I have your apple?" I didn't have much of an appetite, so I let him take it. I watched the streams of cabs going through Fifth Avenue and thoughts about my mom's apartment, only a little way uptown from where we sat. I hadn't seen her since Christmas. I wanted so bad to jump in a taxi and head home. She'd hug me and be glad to see me. But she'd be disappointed too. She'd send me right back to Nancy, reminded me that I had to try harder, even if this was my 6th school in 6 years, and I was probably going to be kicked out again. I wouldn't be able to stand that sad look she'd give me. Mr. Brunner parked his wheelchair at the base of the handicapped ramp. He ate celery while he read a paperback novel. A red umbrella stuck up from the back of his chair, making it look like a motorized cafe table. I was about to unwrap my sandwich when Nancy Bobofit appeared in front of me with her ugly friends. I guess she gotten tired of stealing from the tourists and dumped her half-eaten lunch in Grover's lap. Oops, she grinned at me with her crooked teeth. Her freckles were orange, as if somebody had spray painted her face with liquid Cheetos. I tried to stay cool. The school counselors had told me a million times. Count to 10. Get control of your temper. But I was so mad my mind went blank. A wave roared in my ears. I don't remember touching her, but the next thing I knew, Nancy was sitting on her butt in the fountain, screaming, "Percy pushed me!" Mrs. Dodds materialized next to us.
Some of the kids were whispering, "Did you see? The water, like it grabbed her." I didn't know what they were talking about. All I knew was that I was in trouble again. As soon as Mrs. Dodds was sure poor little Nancy was okay, promising to get her a new shirt at the museum gift shop, etc., Mrs. Dodds turned on me. There was a triumphant fire in your eyes, as if I had done something she'd been waiting for all semester. "Now, honey." "I know," I grumbled. "A month erasing workbooks." That wasn't the right thing to say. "Come with me," Mrs. Dodds said. "Wait," Grover yelped. "It was me. I pushed her." I stared at him, stunned. I couldn't believe he was trying to cover for me. Mrs. Dot scared Grover to death. She glared at him so hard that his whiskery chin trembled. I don't think so, Mr. Underwood, she said. But you will stay here. Grover looked at me desperately. It's okay, man, I told him. Thanks for trying. Honey, Mrs. Dot barked at me. Now. Nancy Bobofit smirked. I gave her my deluxe I'll kill you later stare. Then I turned to face Mrs. Dodds, but she wasn't there. She was standing at the museum entrance, way at the top of the steps, gesturing impatiently at me to come on. How'd she get there so fast? I have moments like that a lot, when my brain falls asleep or something, and the next thing I know I've missed something, as if a puzzle piece fell out of the universe and left me staring at the blank place behind it. The school counselor told me this was part of the ADHD. My brain misinterpreting things. I wasn't so sure. I went after Mrs. Dodds. Halfway up the steps, I glanced back at Grover. He was looking pale, cutting his eyes between me and Mr. Brunner, like he wanted Mr. Brunner to notice what was going on, but Mr. Brunner was absorbed in his novel. I looked back up. Mrs. Dodds had disappeared again. She was now inside the building, at the end of the entrance hall. Okay, I thought. She's going to make me buy a new shirt for Nancy at the gift shop. But apparently that wasn't the plan. I followed her deeper into the museum. When I finally caught up on her, we were back in the Greek and Roman section. Except for us, the gallery was empty. Mrs. Dodds stood with her arms crossed in front of a big marble fire frieze of the Greek gods. She was making this weird noise in her throat like growling. Even without the noise, I would have been nervous. It's weird being alone with a teacher, especially Mrs. Dodds. Something about the way she looked at the frieze as if she wanted to pulverize it. You've been giving us problems, honey, she said. I did the safe thing. I said, yes, ma'am. She tugged on the cuffs of her leather jacket. Did you really think you would get away with it? The look in her eyes was beyond mad. It was evil. She's a teacher, I thought nervously. It's not like she's going to hurt me. I said, I'll try harder, ma'am. Thunder shook the building. We are not fools, Percy Jackson, Mrs. Dodds said. It was only a matter of time before we found you out. Confess and you will suffer less pain. I didn't know what she was talking about. All I could think of was that the teachers must have found the illegal stash of candy I've been selling out of my dorm room. Or maybe they realized I got my essay on Tom Sawyer from the internet without even reading the book, and now they were going to take away my grade. Or worse, they were going to make me read the book. Well, she demanded. Ma'am, your time is up, she hissed. The weirdest thing happened. Her eyes began to glow like barbecue coals. Her fingers stretched, turning into talons. Her jacket melted into large, leathery wings. She wasn't human. She was a shriveled hag with bat wings and claws and a mouth full of yellow fangs. She was about to slice me to ribbons. Then things got even stranger.
Mr. Brunner, who'd been out in front of the museum a minute before, wheeled his chair to the doorway of the gallery, holding a pen in his hand. What to, Percy? He shouted, and tossed the pen through the air. Mrs. Dodds lunged at me. With a yelp, I dodged and felt talons slash the air next to my ear. I snatched the ballpoint pen out of the air, but when it hit in my hand, it wasn't a pen anymore. It was a sword, Mr. Brunner's bronze sword, which he always used on a tournament day. Mrs. Dodds spun towards me with a murderous look in her eyes. My knees were jelly. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped the sword. She snarled, "Die, honey," and she flew straight at me. Absolute terror ran through my body. I did the only thing that came naturally. I swung the sword. The metal blade hit her shoulder and passed clean through her body as if she was made of water,
hiss. Mrs. Dodds was a sandcastle in a power fan. She exploded into yellow powder, vaporized on the spot, leaving nothing but the smell of sulfur and a dying screech, and a chill of evil in the air, as if those two glowing red eyes were still watching me. I was alone. There was a ballpoint pen in my hand. Mr. Brunner wasn't there. Nobody was there but me. My hands were trembling. My lunch must have been contaminated with magic mushrooms or something. Had I imagined the whole thing? I went back outside. It had started to rain. Grover was sitting on the fountain, a museum map tented over his head. Nancy Bubblefoot was still standing there, soaked from her swim in the fountain, grumbling to her ugly friends. When she saw me, she said, I hope Mrs. Kerr wiped your butt. I said, Who? Our teacher, duh. I blinked. We had no teacher named Mrs. Kerr. I asked Nancy what she was talking about. She just rolled her eyes and turned away. I asked Groover where Mrs. Dodd was. He said, Who? But he paused first and he wouldn't look at me, so I thought he was messing with me. Not funny, man, I told him. This is serious. Thunder boomed overhead. I saw Mrs. Brunner sitting under his red umbrella, reading his book as if he had never moved. I went over to him. He looked up a little distracted. That'll be my pen. Please bring your own writing utensils on the future, Mr. Jackson. I handed Mr. Brunner his pen. I hadn't even realized I was still holding it. Sir, I said, where's Mrs. Dodds? He stared at me blankly. Who? The other chaperone, Mrs. Dodds, the pre-algebra teacher. He frowned and sat forwards, looking mildly concerned. Percy, there's no Mrs. Dodds on this trip. As far as I know, there has never been a Mrs. Dodds at Yancey Academy. Are you feeling all right?
Okay, Chapter 2. 3 old ladies knit the socks of death. I'm used to the occasional weird experience, but usually they were over quickly. This 24/7 hallucination was more than I could handle. For the rest of the school year, the entire campus seemed to be playing some sort of trick on me. The students acted like they were completely and totally convinced that Mrs. Kerr, a perky blonde woman who I'd never seen in my life until she got on our bus at the end of the field trip, had been our pre-algebra teacher since Christmas. Every so often, I would spring a Mrs. Dodds reference on someone, just to see if I could trip them up, but they would stare at me like I was psycho. I got so used to and I almost believed them. Mrs. Dodds had never existed. Almost. But Grover couldn't fool me. When I mentioned the name Dodds to him, he would hesitate, then claim she didn't exist. But I knew he was lying. Something was going on. Something had happened at the museum. I didn't have much time to think about it during the day, but at night, visions of Mrs. Dodd with talons and leathery wings would wake me up in a cold sweat. The freak weather continued, which didn't help my mood. One night, a thunderstorm blew out the windows in my dorm. A few days later, the biggest tornado ever spotted in the Hudson Valley touched down only 50 miles from Yancey Academy. One of the current events we studied in social studies class was the unusual number of small planes that had gone down in sudden squalls in the Atlantic that year. I started feeling cranky and irritable most of the time. My grades slipped from D's to F's. I got into more fights with Nancy Bobblefoot and her friends. I was sent out to the hallway in almost every class. Finally, when our English teacher, Mr. Nicol, asked me for the millionth time why I was too lazy to study for the spelling test, I snapped. I called him an old sot. I wasn't even sure what it meant, but it sounded good. My headmaster sent my mother a letter the following week, making it official. I would not be invited back that next year to Yancey Academy. Fine, I told myself, just fine. I was homesick. I wanted to be with my mum in our little apartment on the Upper East Side, even if I had to go to public school and put up with my obnoxious stepfather and his stupid poker parties. And yet, there were things I'd miss at Yancey. The view of the woods out my dorm window, the Hudson River in the distance, the smell of the pine trees. I'd miss Grover, who'd been a good friend, even if he was a little strange. I was worried how he was going to survive next year without me. I'd miss Latin class too. Mr. Bruner's crazy tournament days and his faith that I could actually do well. As the exam we got closer, Latin was the only test I studied for. I hadn't forgotten what Mr. Bruner had told me about this subject being life or death for me. I wasn't sure why, but I'd started to believe him. The evening before my final, I got so frustrated I threw the Cambridge Guide to Greek Mythology across my dorm room. Words had been swimming off the page, circling my head, the letters doing 180s as if they were riding skateboards. There was no way I was going to remember the difference between chiron and charon, or polydesis and polydeusis. And conjugating those Latin verbs, well, forget it. I paced the room, feeling like ants were crawling around inside my shirt. I remember Mr. Bruner's serious expression, his 1,000-year-old eyes. I will only accept the best from you, Percy Jackson. I took a deep breath. I picked up the mythology book. I'd never asked a teacher for help before. Maybe if I talked to Mr. Bruner, he could give me some pointers. At least I could apologize for the big fat F I was about to score in his exam. I didn't want to leave Yancey Academy with him thinking that I hadn't tried. I walked downstairs to the faculty offices. Most of them were dark and empty, but Mr. Bruner's door was ajar. Light from his window stretched out across the hallway floor. I was 3 steps from the door handle when I heard voices inside the office. Mr. Bruner asked a question. A voice that was definitely Grover's said, "Worried about Percy, sir?" I froze. Now, I'm not usually an eavesdropper, but I dare you not to listen if you hear your best friend talking about you to an adult. I inched closer. "Alone this summer," Grover was saying. "I mean, a kindly one, in the school. Now that we know for sure, and they know too." We would only be making matters worse by rushing him," Mr. Bruner said. "We need the boy to mature more." "But he may not have time. The summer solstice deadline will have to be resolved without him, Grover. Let him enjoy his ignorance while he still can." "Sir, he saw her." "His imagination," Mr. Bruner insisted. "The mist over the students and staff will be enough to convince him of that." "Sir, I can't fail my duties again." Grover's voice was choked with emotion. "You know what that would mean." "You haven't failed, Grover," Mr. Bruner said kindly. "I should have seen her for what she was. Now, let's just worry about keeping Percy alive until the next fall." The mythology book dropped out of my hand and hit the floor with a thud. Mr. Bruner went silent. My heart hammering, I picked up the book and backed down the hall. A shadow slid across the lighted glass of Mr. Bruner's office door. The shadow was something much taller than my wheelchair-bound teacher, holding something that suspiciously looked like an archer's bow. I opened the nearest door and slipped inside. A few seconds later, I heard a slow clop, 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 like muffled wood blocks, then a sound of an animal shuffling right outside my door. A large, dark shape paused in front of the glass, but then moved on. A bead of sweat trickled down my neck. Somewhere in the hallway, Mr. Bruner spoke. "Nothing," he muttered. "My nerves haven't been right since the winter solstice." "Mine neither," Grover said. "But could have sworn." "Go back to the dorm," Mr. Bruner said. "You've got a long day of exams tomorrow." Ugh, don't remind me. The lights went out in Mr. Bruner's office. I waited in the dark for what seemed like forever. Finally, I slipped out into the hallway and made my way back up to the dorm. Grover was lying on his bed, studying his Latin exam notes like he'd been there all night. "Hey," he said, bleary-eyed. "You going to be ready for this test?" I didn't answer. You look awful," he frowned. "Is everything okay?" "Just tired. I turned so he couldn't read my expression and started getting ready for bed. I didn't understand what I'd heard downstairs. I wanted to believe I'd imagined the whole thing. But one thing was clear. Grover and Mr. Brunner were talking about me behind my back, and they thought I was in some kind of danger. All right, and that was Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief.